It wasn't until I reached the age of 59 that I began to understand just how many versions of life I had quietly abandoned without even realizing it. That year, something within me shifted, subtly at first, like the early signs of a storm still hidden behind a calm horizon. I began to ask myself questions I had never dared to voice aloud. Margot, what have you withheld from yourself all these years? What parts of you were left behind along the way? These weren't just passing reflections. They struck like echoes, both rebuke and revelation. The truth wasn't comfortable, but it waited for me patiently, just beneath the surface, ready to make itself known in the most unexpected of ways. It all began one overcast morning in late September, just as the mountain fog was lifting from the hills around my house in Asheville. I had decided, without knowing exactly why, that it was time to finally clear the attic. I hadn't set foot in that space since Victor, my husband of 35 years, passed away. It had become a kind of shrine to memory, not curated or organized, but simply avoided. Avoidance was how I survived, I suppose. But on that day, something steeled in me. I climbed the narrow stairs, my fingers trailing along the railing, heart unsteady. When I pushed open the attic door, the scent of dust and cedar rushed at me. It smelled exactly as I had feared, forgotten time. The room was dim and still, filled with collapsing boxes and the faint hum of silence. I approached the nearest stack and peeled back the top, and there it was, a photo album, heavy and cloth-bound, tucked between yellowed sheets of newspaper. The moment I opened it, I stopped breathing. The first photo nearly unraveled me. I must have been in my 20s on a beach I barely remembered, standing barefoot in the sand of some bright, windless coastline, maybe Costa Rica or Sardinia. My head tilted back in laughter, one hand raised with a pink drink, my other resting on the curve of my hip. I wore a lemon-colored bikini and a confidence I hadn't seen on myself in decades. Big sunglasses, loose hair, an energy that said, "The world is mine, and I don't owe it anything today." I sat back against a dusty crate, album open on my lap, when I heard footsteps on the attic stairs. Startled, I turned toward the doorway, and there stood Julian, my step-grandson. I hadn't seen him in nearly 3 years, not since he moved to Seattle for work. He looked different. No longer the lanky teenager who used to tinker with tools in Victor's workshop. Now 29, he was broader, steadier somehow. Grown. A quiet presence that carried itself without apology. "Margot," he said, lifting a paper bag and a takeaway coffee in each hand. His voice was both familiar and unfamiliar, deeper, but still gentle. "Saw your car out front. Thought I'd check on you." I managed a surprised smile. "Julian, what a surprise." Before I could process it further, he stepped inside, looking around the attic with mild curiosity. Then his eyes landed on the album resting in my hands. "What's that?" he asked, a hint of intrigue softening his tone. "Just old photos," I said quickly, instinctively drawing the book closer. But Julian had already crouched down beside me. Without a word, he reached over and turned the page back to the beach photo. He froze. "This is you?" he asked, eyes wide, not mockingly, but with stunned sincerity. I gave a short, self-conscious laugh. "A long time ago." He studied the photo longer than I expected, his gaze steady, something unreadable in it. "You look amazing," he said finally, almost as if to himself. "It's hard to imagine you like this. So alive." I didn't know what to say. The air between us shifted. We stayed like that, seated among forgotten keepsakes and dust, as he flipped through the album slowly. Photo after photo. A rooftop party in Madrid, me barefoot in a red sequin dress at a New Year's gala, spinning in circles with my arms wide. Another of me laughing, holding an ice cream cone in both hands, eyes closed. "You were wild," Julian said at one point, half laughing, half reverent. "Weren't we all once?" I replied, brushing it off, though my heart beat faster with every page. And as he lingered over each image, I felt something unfurl inside me, an old warmth I didn't even recognize at first. The kind that has nothing to do with romance and everything to do with being seen, remembered, witnessed. We laughed about my terrible 80s bangs, talked about the cities I once roamed, about how different the world had felt then and how different I had been. Then came silence. He closed the album gently, but his eyes stayed on me. "You really are something, Margot," he said softly. "It's strange, but I feel like I'm meeting you for the first time." I didn't respond. I couldn't. No one had looked at me like that in years, not with desire, but with awe, with kindness. And then, without warning, he reached for my hand. His fingers were warm, calm, unshaking. "Your beauty," he whispered, "it's not the kind that fades. It's the kind that stays. I hope you know that." My chest tightened. Not from fear, but recognition. Of being seen. Not as Victor's widow. Not as someone's step-grandmother. But as a woman. That moment changed something in me. "Try it on," Julian said with a mischievous glint in his eyes, the ghost of a smile teasing the corner of his mouth. He held the green dress like it was sacred, a memory sewn into fabric. I hesitated, laughing nervously, brushing invisible dust off the sleeves. "Oh, I highly doubt it still fits," I murmured, smoothing my hand along the seam. "That dress was made for someone who used to move differently through the world." "There's only one way to find out," he said, almost playfully. But his tone held something firmer underneath, something encouraging and rooted in belief. Drawn by the moment, or perhaps by his quiet confidence, I disappeared into the hallway to change. I slipped the dress on, half expecting the zipper to betray me, but it didn't. It slid up with a soft, final sound, as though it had been waiting all this time to come alive again. When I stepped back into the attic, Julian turned, and for a heartbeat, time stilled. He didn't speak right away. His expression shifted into something unreadable. Not shock, not desire exactly, but something reverent. His gaze traced the lines of the dress, then found my face again. "You look radiant," he said at last, barely above a whisper. "Honestly, Margot, just stunning." Heat rushed to my face. His words lingered longer than they should have, not because they were inappropriate, but because I hadn't heard anything like them in years. Something inside me stirred. Something I'd shelved away long ago, between grief and routine. What unfolded over the weeks that followed was not a declaration. It wasn't sudden. It was subtle, like weather changing in a place you've lived so long you almost forget to notice. A bond began to form between us, neither forbidden nor encouraged, only undeniable. A thread that tightened slowly, gently. Julian stayed longer than planned, helping me sort through the attic, laughter hidden in dusty boxes, stories resurrected from tangled jewelry and faded letters. But the real change wasn't in the attic. It was in me. One quiet evening, I stood at the kitchen sink, scrubbing a stubborn pan as twilight settled over the backyard. Without a sound, Julian appeared behind me. His presence registered as warmth before touch. He rested a hand on my shoulder, firm, steady. A spark jolted down my spine. "You're overthinking again," he said gently, as if he'd plucked the thought straight from my chest. "How could I not?" I replied, barely finding my voice. This isn't normal." "Who decides what's normal?" he asked. Not defensive, just honest. His words hung in the air, brushing against everything I'd believed. I turned away, not because I wanted to end the moment, but because it scared me how deeply I felt seen. Later that night, when the house was quiet and his door was closed, I sat in the living room alone. The photo album we'd unearthed was on my lap again, pages open to a life I could barely believe was once mine. That girl, barefoot on tiled roofs, laughing with sunburnt shoulders. Who had she become? She hadn't disappeared, I realized. She had simply been buried beneath the years, children, caretaking, grief, silence. But something in Julian's presence had cracked the shell. Not broken it, softened it. His visits became routine. His departures became harder. I caught myself waiting for the sound of his car in the drive, for his voice calling out, "Margot, you home?" Then, one golden evening, as the sky painted itself in lavender and rust, we sat on the porch in rare silence. Julian turned to me, tension tightening his jaw. "I don't know how to say this in a way that doesn't sound wrong," he said, his voice low and careful. "But I've never felt like this with anyone." My breath caught. "I know it's complicated," he added quickly. "But I can't pretend this isn't real." His honesty stunned me. "I don't know what to do," I admitted. My voice cracked under the weight of it. "Then let's not figure it out alone," he said. "Let's just find out together." What followed was a tangle of fear and electricity. Whispers, doubt, long stares into nothing. I imagined the judgment before it arrived, imagined it so vividly I could hear the voices before they spoke. And then one morning, in an old wooden box full of letters, I found it, a sealed envelope addressed in Victor's unmistakable handwriting. "To Margot when you need it most." My hands shook as I opened it. Julian, beside me, said nothing. Victor's script, steady, curved, oddly gentle, leapt from the page. "If you're reading this, it means I'm gone. And if you're wondering whether you're allowed to live fully again, the answer is yes. My deepest joy was loving you. But life doesn't end with absence. If someone makes you laugh again like we used to, or makes you feel bright and whole, don't run from it. Embrace it. For you. For both of us." Tears blurred the words. I folded the letter against my chest, trembling. Julian placed a hand on my back, grounding, not pulling. "Are you okay?" he whispered. "I think, yes," I answered. "But I don't know what kind of yes this is." Hope, grief, guilt. Release, it swirled in me, unnameable. Yet something had changed. That letter didn't give me permission, it gave me peace. And sometimes, that's the only kind of permission we really need. Whether what I felt was gratitude or the sheer gravity of possibility, I couldn't say. Even with Victor's blessing echoing in my heart, the road ahead felt like a walk through fog, not dark, but thick with the unknown. Every encounter with Julian was electric, but not in the way of novels or movies. It wasn't lust. It was energy, charged air, unspoken recognition. I began to notice things I hadn't before. The way his eyes pinched with genuine laughter, how his voice shifted when he spoke about people he loved, the silent steadiness in his posture when he listened, really listened. One evening, we were side by side in the kitchen. A playlist murmured behind us, and the scent of garlic and rosemary filled the space. We reached for the same cutting board, fingers brushing, then pausing, then neither of us pulling away. Our eyes locked. The moment expanded. I stepped back first, my breath uneven. "This is complicated," I whispered, my hand gripping the countertop. Julian set the board down slowly, turning to face me. "It doesn't have to be," he said quietly. "But it is," I replied, the words thick. "I'm your step-grandmother, Julian." "This isn't," I stopped short. "Isn't what?" he asked. "Expected? Conventional?" He tilted his head slightly, repeating what he'd said once before. "Who decides what's normal anyway?" I looked away. Not because I was ashamed, but because his gaze made me feel so utterly seen. It was too much. And yet not enough. "There will be talk," I said. "There already is," he answered calmly. "Let them talk. They don't know who we are. They don't know what we've endured. They don't understand what this means." His certainty both grounded me and unsteadied me. I hadn't asked for it, but here it was. And sure enough, the whispers came. It didn't take long. A neighbor saw Julian leaving my home one evening just as the porch light flickered on. By morning, the silence of our street had turned sharp with speculation. Within days, whispers bloomed into commentary. One afternoon, while picking tomatoes at the market, I passed two women leaning over baskets of grapes. "Did you hear about Margot?" one hissed. "Her step-grandson." "Can you believe it?" "She should be ashamed," the other replied. I didn't flinch. I didn't pause. I kept walking. But inside, something in me crumbled. Their words felt like frost on glass, thin, sharp, unwelcome. When I got home, Julian was already there, waiting for me on the porch with a calm that didn't quite match the storm in my chest. I walked toward him slowly, tears threatening to fall. "They're talking about us," I said, barely audible. He didn't hesitate. He opened his arms, and I collapsed into them like I had nowhere else left to go. "Let them," he murmured, holding me tight. "They don't matter. They don't know us." But it wasn't just neighbors. It was closer than that. It was my daughter, Nina, when she found out, and I'm still not sure how exactly. She showed up the next evening, furious. She burst into the living room, her voice already rising. "How could you, Mom?" she demanded, pacing like a trapped animal. "With him? With Julian of all people?" I stayed calm, or tried to. "He's not your blood," I said gently. "Not your cousin. Not in that way." "That's not the point," she snapped. "He's part of this family. He feels like one of us." "I understand how it looks," I told her. "But it's not what you think." She stared at me, searching for something in my face. "What would Dad say if he were here?" I didn't answer. Not right away. I handed her the letter, Victor's letter, the one that had come to me like a lighthouse when I was drifting. She read it. Slowly, her expression softened, but only slightly. She wasn't ready. "I don't get it," she finally whispered, setting the letter on the table like it burned her fingers. "He's so much younger than you. What could he possibly see in you?" Her words sliced through me, not out of cruelty, but because she was voicing what I had feared myself. I stood tall anyway, not in defiance, but in quiet truth. "He sees me, Nina," I said, steady as I could. "Not as someone who's done or finished or defined by who I once was. He sees me now, as I am. And that is more than I've been given in a very long time. Not just as a woman who had once been young, but as someone still worthy of love, right now, in this moment." That was the truth Julian saw in me, and slowly, I began to see it too. As the weeks became months, we endured the quiet storms together. The whispers didn't stop, but we learned how to breathe through them. There were days when the pressure almost buckled me, when the glances from across the street or the tightening of someone's smile in the grocery store made me question everything. And yet, Julian never wavered. When doubt found me, he found me too. Steady, patient, with that same calm certainty that first disarmed me in the attic. He helped me uncover corners of myself I hadn't visited in decades. We danced, not perfectly, but joyfully, on the back porch to jazz we streamed from his phone. I hadn't danced since my 30s. I thought that part of me was gone. But there it was, alive and breathless under the stars. We took a short hiking trip to the Blue Ridge Trails, where I laughed at my own clumsiness and found peace in the rhythm of our steps. We tried new restaurants, made plans for a weekend by the sea, and discovered that even ordinary moments could feel extraordinary when you're finally awake inside your own life again. But the most important changes didn't happen on the outside. Inside, I was shifting, rebuilding. I stopped apologizing for wanting happiness. I stopped waiting for someone else's permission to feel alive. One early summer afternoon, I was tending to the dahlias by the gate, humming a song I couldn't name, when a familiar car pulled into the drive. I turned, and there she was, Nina. She stepped out slowly, her face drawn but not hardened. There was something new in her eyes, softness. "Mom," she said, her voice thinner than usual, almost shy, "can we talk?" I nodded, brushing dirt from my hands onto my apron. We sat on the porch where the sunlight slanted through the branches and the cicadas buzzed, filling the silence. She took a long breath. "I've been thinking about what you said," she admitted. "About how he sees you, and I think I finally understand. At least, I'm trying to." That caught me off guard. She looked out across the yard, not meeting my eyes. I've spent so much of my life chasing what other people thought I should be, and it's made me tired, angry, empty even. But you chose joy, even when it came with judgment. That takes more courage than I knew you had. I reached for her hand, and this time she didn't pull away. "I only want you to be happy too," I told her gently, "even if it doesn't look the way the world expects." She nodded, a faint smile tugging at the corner of her mouth. "I'm trying, Mom. I really am." And that was enough. Over time, the noise faded. The judgment quieted, or maybe we just stopped noticing it. Those who truly mattered, friends, family, came around, slowly, quietly, without dramatic announcements. They saw us, not as a scandal, but as two people who had chosen something tender and real. One night, long after the sun had gone, Julian and I sat on the porch in silence. Stars scattered above us like pinpricks in velvet. He reached for my hand, warm, strong, familiar. "Margot," he said, his voice steady and low. "You've given me something I didn't think existed. A home, a place to be seen. A kind of love that makes everything before it feel like a rehearsal." I smiled, tears rising to my eyes. "You brought me back to life." In that moment, I knew we had chosen well. Not easily, not without wounds, but wisely, against expectation, against the grain. Together, we found something rare, a love that didn't ask permission, that didn't apologize, that didn't fit neatly into the world's categories. A love that revived us fully and without shame. As Margot and Julian walked their own strange and luminous path, they revealed something vital. Sometimes, true joy lives outside what is deemed acceptable. Their story reminds us that love is not defined by expectation, but by connection, and the willingness to live fully, even when the world looks on with narrowed eyes. And now we turn to you. Was this an act of selfishness, or a courageous rediscovery of love? Did Margot betray convention, or did she reclaim herself? Share your thoughts in the comments below. We would truly love to hear your perspective. If this story moved you, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to the Memory Archive for more quiet stories that linger long after the screen fades. And be sure to ring the notification bell so you never miss a moment of meaning. Thank you for spending this time with us. Until next time.